It's about the view. It's become like a medical hospital that displays human misfailure. Like it's like here, let's look at this political oddity. You know, it's like it really is like the left-wing equivalent of a carnival sideshow, except instead of bearded ladies and fat clowns and two-headed cows. Well, let me rephrase that. But The View is a victim of the sunk cost fallacy. You know, how can you now speak the truth when for years you've been telling lie after lie after lie? Now you're carrying this big bag of rocks around you because it's too harmful for their ego to admit that we really were dishonest.
Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus just dropped a brutal dose of honesty. The View's Sunny Hostin and her crew were left stunned. The sarcasm was sharp enough to cut glass. Your curiosity's probably peaking now to let's dive into this savage takedown.
The feral monsters of The View say they've never heard of you-know-who. True, the show that makes mornings hell claim that my name doesn't ring a bell. It's time for...
Our view on The View. Ugh.
Yeah, the witch's coven finally shows me some lovin'. Yesterday on The View, yours truly was the subject of conversation. Apparently, the broads have no idea who I am, or so they say. Hit it, Gladys.
They said that Gutfeld talks about you all the time.
Who is he? Really, who is he?
I don't watch the show.
He has a show.
I don't watch
I've
the
never
show.
heard of him.
Yeah.
I guess he's just obsessed with me.
No. Next, Joy's going to say she's never heard of carbs. Seriously, her denial of knowing me is as believable as a redhead.
The world of political commentary is usually predictable, especially on The View. Same old liberal talking points, dressed up in fake outrage. But then came Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus, smashing through the noise like a sledgehammer. And yes, they absolutely delivered.
Obsession? I mean, come on, Joy. Where would you even get that idea? Like Joy Behar's face, it's looking worse and worse by the day. More full of crap than Joy Behar after a night of scotch and Taco Bell. Her being named Joy is like me being named ugly. Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. It now smells like a humid day inside Joy Behar's moo-moo. The motives stink worse than Joy Behar's jog bra. I mean, assuming she jogs. Oh, wait, there she is. She has a point. Maybe I am obsessed, but some people are obsessed with Bigfoot, and they don't get to see him on TV every afternoon.
They launched one blow after another, tearing The View to shreds. The hosts? Scrambling for a response. And they weren't even in the room. That it's the joy of watching The View implode without the usual self-righteous noise.
You know who just stunk up The View? The Bidens joined The View this morning for the entire hour. The audience was caught off guard, but knew something was up when they saw a dozen Secret Service agents and 2 embalmers. There were a few awkward moments, though, when a confused Joe asked if he could bid on the showcase. But was he surprised Kamala lost?
Tyrus and Greg Gutfeld just delivered a scathing dose of reality. The sarcasm was so scathing that it might have broken glass, leaving Sunny Hostin and her team dumbfounded. Right now, your curiosity is most likely at its height. That let's get started on this brutal takedown.
Sure, all that, and the price of butter. Sunny gets the game ball. If it wasn't for her, asking that question, it might have been a closer election. But when oh no, nothing really comes to mind, I was like, cha-ching. Listen, they're bitter, they're angry, they're entitled. They also should be, this should have been a reset for everyone who pushed lies and misinformation for the last, they called him Hitler, they call these things, America rejected them. And instead of coming back and saying, we lied, they instead are now doubling down. So let her keep doing it, because if she keeps that up, we're going to keep getting the Senate and probably the House and the White House, because people see right through your lies. So keep doing what you're doing. Game ball.
Political commentary, particularly on The View, tends to be predictable. The same old leftist talking points wrapped in a phony outcry. Then Tyrus and Greg Gutfeld arrived, slamming like a sledgehammer through the cacophony, and they certainly did deliver.
Brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter.
They struck repeatedly, destroying the view in the process. The hosts? They weren't even there, yet they were frantically trying to come up with an answer. Without the typical self-righteous clamor, it's the delight of seeing the view collapse.
Even that, and The View, you don't need to find Trumpers. You need to fire your race baiters.
Yeah.
You need to fire the two races. You've had people. You had a McCain on there. You've had people on there before, and you ran them off. So the racist ones who want to stick to this, Whoopi and Sunny, and was it Bette Midler? What's her name? Yeah, broke-ass Bette Midler. Fire them and bring people in. Maybe you could get McCain to come back. She was a Republican, but every show and every break, she was nearly in tears because she was being attacked.
His podcast, liberal talking heads travel to this unruly arena to figuratively die. Not a script. No phony cheers. Pure, unadulterated pandemonium. And Greg, with his razor-sharp humor, took aim at the View in one spectacular episode. Pretending to hold the moral high ground while arguing the most ridiculous arguments possible is what that so-called safe sanctuary of haughty, left-wing people does.
The problem is that you have to go after the racist people. And if the CEO goes, you know what, I'm not going to allow a woman on my show or man that will go after white America and talk about them like dogs. That doesn't represent our ideals or values for anyone. And get rid of those people, and this will clear up real quick. So do you have to actually look in the mirror and clean up your own backyard and get the racist people out? Because that's who you allowed in. You allowed black racists on TV who could just go all day and say anything about white people. And I guess lo and behold, they forgot that there's a lot of people at home, white people at home during the day that are not watching your show anymore. So just clean it up.
Yeah, you know, Emma.
The View never had a chance. It's like throwing raw meat into a cave full of untamed animals. The fallout? Comedy gold. Greg has a surgical sense of humor in addition to being cruel. In addition to making fun of The View, he reveals every phony, self-righteous moment they attempt to disguise as virtue. Greg responds with razor-sharp precision each time they make a stale talking point. And it's not just for laughs. He's criticizing a media conglomerate that operates under the false assumption that their opinions are the only ones that count. There should be a warning sign on The View that reads, "Enter at your own risk, and prepare to lose your dignity." With all the nuance of a wrecking ball, Greg began by making fun of their fixation with political correctness, which involves promoting inclusion and stifling anybody who doesn't share their viewpoint. It's practically cute. They speak about tolerance yet are unable to tolerate dissenting views for more than 5 seconds. For them, diversity entails a California Democrat and a New York Democrat bickering. What's at stake?
That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years. They're turning on me. So that makes Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by the View's gravitational pull.
Greater than before. Greg is far from finished analyzing The View, however. Calling out their progressive principles while they act like morally superior political elites is insufficient. Greg goes farther and reveals that The View's interpretation of tolerance is just hypocritical to go outside their tidy little worldview. You're wrong. Shut up, express now. Congratulations, if you disagree with them, you're immediately written off. Overpowered by self-congratulatory monologues, moral superiority, and righteous outrage. The actual kicker? They don't want fresh viewpoints or sincere dialogue. You are not worthy of their attention if you are not repeating their lines, preaching to an echo chamber of people who give each other pats on the back without realizing they're all singing the same old stale song as their game.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say in The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior seen in all spouses. regardless of skin color. People marry, they listen to each other, they have something in common with them. They share their political views. She just didn't want to upset her husband by saying her husband makes her do everything, and then she'd have to accuse him of being a racist. Because if he told her that this is what white women do, then he's a racist.
Promoting inclusion while excluding anybody who dared to question their holy narrative is the oldest trick in the book. It is similar to a cult, except they solely worship their own enlightened beliefs. Greg, meantime, observes from his throne, warning everyone that the minute you cross the view's boundaries, their kind of tolerance breaks down. Greg didn't stop there, however. Like a hound on a bone, he persistently dug into their hypocrisy. He ripped apart the view's passion of defending their moral superiority and telling the people how to believe while their reasoning breaks down like a badly constructed sandcastle. The way Greg skillfully pointed out how the View enjoys criticizing people for actions they themselves engage in on a regular basis was like watching a surgeon dissect a weak argument. While holding a mirror to their own obvious inconsistencies, they have become experts at pointing fingers. Their ability to blame others for their own shortcomings while utterly unaware of the irony is nearly astounding.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from...
Greg exposed their double standards for everyone to see by pulling back the curtain. Nobody will get away with it under his supervision, particularly not when it's cloaked in arrogant self-righteousness, the favorite activity of a hypocrite, accusing someone of precisely what they are good at. Greg also had no intention of letting them off the hook. Tyrus comes next. Tyrus, a force of nature who doesn't care about politeness, is the wrecking ball if Greg is the cerebral scalpel. Tyrus disregards nuance, while Greg's sarcasm is a well-honed weapon. He eliminates the problem outright, that he has no interest in skirting the issue or sugarcoating it. He'll take a sledgehammer to your argument, and it's okay if it crushes your emotions in the process. Tyrus' comments is so real and refreshing because of his unvarnished honesty that he has no interest in following anyone's rules or conforming to any story. Without hesitation or guilt, he is there to destroy arrogant facades. Tyrus' destruction of the View was akin to a goods train colliding with a glass pile that's unavoidable, noisy, and dirty. Tyrus was like a bull in a china shop, delivering the facts straight to the point while Greg was weaving complex webs of sarcasm. The standard left-wing talking points didn't interest him. His purpose was to demonstrate to them how far their arguments had deviated from the truth.
Sausage maker Johnsonville is recalling more than 42,000 pounds of pork sausage for possible contamination with plastic fibers. Fortunately, authorities were able to track all 42,000 pounds to a single location in New York City.
Consider Tyrus' observation that the View enjoys distorting the truth. They may say something that seems correct, but when you dig deeper, it's as empty as an Easter bunny made of chocolate. Tyrus just pointed it out as misinformation disguised as a velvet glove. He prevented them from using the standard story. Simply put, he established the law. People won't take you seriously if you spread false information. This was not a discussion. This was a much-needed public service announcement for the View. Then the true magic took place. Without even being in the same room, Greg and Tyrus attacked the hosts with their amazing combination of sarcasm and truth bombs. It was not necessary for them to interact with them personally. They succeeded because of the sheer power of their words. Watching the hosts of The View, secure behind their desks, exchange glances as if they've just been caught taking cookies from the jar is really rewarding. However, no one is there to apprehend them. That it's similar to hearing someone tell a very funny joke that you understand but don't understand. You just aren't sure how to react. Tyrus and Greg Gutfeld weren't only joking about The View. They were pointing out the obvious inconsistencies in every talking point the program had ever attempted to promote. Greg and Tyrus were the ideal team to destroy the show's collective arrogance, which was more important than the individual hosts. Greg took the microphone and pointed out how self-righteous everything was. He made fun of the excessively prepared fury that drives so much of The View's daily programming and made fun of their incapacity to look outside their own little bubble. It was similar to watching a dog chase its own tail, only that this time the dog believed that by barking at the sky, it was fixing issues in the world. Their sanctimonious air was well counterbalanced by Greg's remarks. He reminded them that maybe they should begin by embracing views that don't cleanly fit into their agenda if they wish to promote tolerance. All of that tolerance was really lip service up to that point. And Tyrus, yes, Tyrus, didn't hold back. Tyrus arrived like a wrecking ball, delivering a 1-2 punch of hard truth and reasoning, while Greg humorously painted the scene. Liberal superiority and victimhood never seem to understand how hypocritical they are. It all comes down to identifying the appropriate victim and cause. Feeling oppressed is okay as long as you're in the correct political party. Tyrus wasn't amenable to this cliched and stale tactic. He reminded The View that while they like playing the victim, they seldom ever admit that their own ideology has structural flaws. The splendor of it all? Greg and Tyrus's constant analysis of every mistake destroyed The View's effort to unite behind their purported moral superiority. They seemed to be holding up a mirror, and The View saw an ugly image gazing back. The hosts seemed like deer in headlights, with their typical self-righteousness. With the accuracy of a surgeon's scalpel, Greg and Tyrus cut through their echo chamber, creating a collective hush that was nearly audible. Greg and Tyrus entered the ring and called The View's bluff in a world where politics often seems like an endless game of high-stakes poker. The View was unable to defend themselves because they were caught in their own web of contradictions. The genius of it all, not even a confrontation had place. Point-by-point rebuttals, uncomfortable silences, and rising voices were all absent. Tyrus and Greg didn't have to physically be there. The View was thrown into a whirlpool of uncertainty and bewilderment by all they said while enjoying the comforts of their podcast. The reaction? That was anticipated. Tyrus and Greg are, after all, the comical equivalent of a storm. You can hear the wind roaring and know it's coming, but then all of a sudden you find yourself standing in the center of a demolished set of liberal talking points, wondering how you got there. These two are fantastic since they don't just focus on the easy targets. Reminding The View and its audience that the emperor is naked, they get right to the point. The View ultimately lost not only a debate, but also any trace of the moral superiority they love to display. Tyrus and Greg not only pointed out their inconsistencies, but they also brought attention to the whole sham. What's the greatest part? They accomplished all of this without ever entering the lion's lair.